Hello and welcome back everyone, we Weeb Online, and today I'm gonna continue the story What If Naruto and Fem Itachi Were Abandoned by Konoha Part 2. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a big thumbs up, and to watch more videos like this, subscribe to my channel and turn that bell notification on so you never miss an upload. Now wasting no more time, let's begin.
The next day, on the last day of the third stage, the visitors, shinobis, candidates, and possible clients all met in the stadium. While they were waiting for the examiner, Namikaze Naruto, to show up, the Raikage secretly patted the package on his lap that was wrapped in brown paper and tied with string. I'm going to name my replacement before the matches start. This is a small gift I've been meaning to give him, and I think I'll give it to him when I tell him about his new job. It will be a good reminder. The stadium and the important people there watched and waited. At 10:01, the examiner, Namikaze Naruto, came in a cloud of sparks. The Bolt agent who rang the gong for silence got a nod from the Raikage. Everyone in the stadium looked at the box where the cages and daimyos were sitting. The Raikage didn't say anything until he was sure they were listening. As most of you know, I'm an old man. I took over when my successor died, and I stayed on because I couldn't find anyone I could see as the Rokudame Raikage. That is, until now. He has been tested and ratified by his peers in Kumo's council. Lightning Country's daimyo accepted his candidacy without hesitation. He is a relative newcomer to Kumo, but what he has done is almost miraculous. There were spontaneous cheers, whoops, and screams of support and encouragement from the crowd. The chant came from the noise. Na MIKs, na MIKs, na MIKs, na MIKs, na MIKs. Every cage except 3 watched as the new Rokudame Raikage, the third stage examiner, bowed, waved his hands, and accepted the support and tribute. Hiroshi waited until there was a small pause before he spoke. Most of you know Naruto as a Junin comrade, a diplomat with many allies outside our borders, a skilled contract negotiator, a teacher to many aspiring young nins, a counselor to quite a few of our academy students and genins. Now that he has left Bolt, I have no concerns with revealing his other aspects. With those enigmatic words, he tossed the brown paper wrapped package in an arc across the stadium. The blonde jumped up to get the package. A no-seal's windblade cut the strings, which made it possible to open the package. He took out a handful of cream-colored material and dropped the paper and string on the floor. Some kind of clothing. Then he let out a long, loud, happy laugh. He took the fabric in both hands and swung it to put on what looked like a coat. A knee-length piece of clothing with no sleeves and no buttons to close it. The stadium was full of a strong breeze that made the long skirts flap and his hair ruffle. People who had met the Yondaime Hokage and remembered him were moved by the way he looked. It was like seeing Namikaze Minato again, as if he hadn't died more than 25 years ago. Deep purple kanji symbols for Rokudame and Raikage were embroidered on the left front panel. On the right side of the front panel, there were other symbols: a blue crescent moon wrapped around an orange swirl that looked like a whirlpool, and a black silhouette of a fox with 9 tails. Then he turned around so that everyone in the crowd could see the bigger design on his back. The symbols for storm were stitched with red silk thread. Shikamaru opened his mouth so wide that his cigarette fell out of it. Aka Arashi. Sasaka looked through the eyes of the Sharingan. His soul was burned by envy, jealousy, and regret. Sakura gave a headshake. It can't be. There must be some kind of trick. Shino replied, it isn't. He didn't take his eyes off the show. When Inochi realized what everything meant, he turned pink. Shikaku took 2 antacid pills and a big drink from a hip flask. He then gave the flask to an old teammate, who drank half of the rest. A single teardrop fell from Kakashi's eye. He looks like Minato, doesn't he? Everyone turned to look at the Gamma Sanin who had sneaked up on the Konohan group and was smiling. What? Did you think I'd miss my second apprentice becoming a cage? He laughed even harder and sipped sake from his own hip flask. The Sanin smiled slowly as he looked at his student, who, besides Icha Paradise, was his best work. The brat was a real pain, just like his father, but it was worth it. His birth village is full of bigots, cowards, fools, and incompetents, so he will make a great Raikage. I'm definitely thinking about making this place my home for good. Kumo is a bit cold, but the women here are more open to flirting and word play. Those Chunin twins made me pass out with just words and a bit of skin, he said, his eyes getting blurry. Unfortunately, to teach me a lesson, they also stole my wallet. It made me want to change my point of view for my next book. He smiled at the men and said, the first release will be in Kumo, then Iwa, and then Suna. Then he left to join a group of pretty Kumo women who were not soldiers. Naruto smiled as the cheers died down, but he could still feel the good energy. He could feel the excitement, the almost uncontrollable eagerness, and it charged him. Before he spoke, a fierce smile split his face. "Thank you, Kumo. For letting me in. For taking me in. For being there for me. Hiroshi Jii-san, you remind me of another Kage, one who has been dead for a long time but who was my only family for a long time. I worked hard for years to make him proud and to live by the values he held so dear. It didn't work because other people didn't agree with me. But here in Kumo I can see the will of fire right here, and it gives me ideas." In response, the crowd grew and cheered to show that they agreed. Naruto looked at the 3 Kumo genins who had made it to the semifinals of the 3rd stage and were filled with awe. "I see a little bit of myself in each of you 3 and in every other Kumo nin. The desire and determination to do well and be the best you can be. I've never been a Junin sensei, and with all the responsibilities of being Raikage, I doubt I ever will be one. However, that doesn't stop me from teaching and learning. In the years to come, don't rest on your laurels. Intrigue me. Inspire me. Awe me. If I can see the spark within you, I will help you. If you specialize in something I don't, I will find those that can teach you. If Kumo has no specialists, I will look for them among our new allies, Suna and Iwa. If it is truly esoteric and long forgotten, Kumo will support your quest of self-impro." Hiroshi smoked his pipe with a proud smile on his face. Tsunade gave an unhappy smile. "Naruto wanted to be Hokage so badly. He was the one who persuaded me to take the job as a fill-in. I really hoped that one day he would be Rokudame. I never thought that he might be the Rokudame Raikage." She laughed softly. Hiroshi gave a shrug. "That's how life works. What's bad for Konoha is good for Kumo." His eyes were cold. "We have no plans to attack Konoha, but we will fight back if we are attacked. Put a leash on your council, Tsunade. If they go behind your back, we won't be responsible for the deaths that will happen. Naruto is very much his father's son, and he will not hesitate to protect his village, Kumo." Tsunade nodded slowly. "I see what you mean, and I will remind the council that it would be stupid to attack a big village that is friends with 2 other big villages." Jiaira gave a soft snort. "Get your plans for leaving Konoha up to date, Tsunade-san. I can almost guarantee that some idiot in Konoha will do something stupid and start a fight." Tsunade bit her lip and did not say anything. She thought the Kage must be right. She looked over at Naruto, who was still talking. She could see that he had charisma, just like his father. Minato could lead his team right into hell if he wanted to. Naruto must have the same skill if he was able to win over an entire village and get Iwa to sign a peace treaty made by the son of the man who caused them to lose the war with Konoha. Naruto gave a soft smile when he saw that the non-Kumo candidates looked a little scared. He turned around. The sky was cloudy, and thunderheads were getting bigger. This is typical weather for Kumo. He gave them a more hopeful smile. "Tell you what, since you probably aren't very good at fighting in this kind of weather, I'll give you a handicap," he said with a smile to the Kumo genins who were looking down because they knew how to use the weather. "You can't always count on cloudy weather that works well with your fighting styles, so toughen up, Kiyoshi, Zaraki, and Reiko. This is the Bolt motto: adapt, improvise, and overcome." Momochi Wakashi made a face and stared at the new Raikage, the examiner. "I don't see what you can do about the weather, Namikaze-sama. No one has enough chakra to move so much air and change the weather systems." The examiner just raised a finger to warn. "But, Momochi-san, you're wrong. You think I'll move the clouds, but I won't." He leaned his head back and looked up at the sky, his hands hanging loosely by his sides. Then he put them above his head in a shape that looked a little bit like a cup. On his arm, the yellow, purple, and red tattoos started to glow and almost turn white. Chakra gathered in his hands and made a haze around his body. Then he said his name. Namikaze Hijutsu. Raikaze no Suzaku. When the blast of raw power left his hand, it turned into a huge phoenix with fire and lightning coming out of its wings. As soon as the ghostly figure hit the clouds, it vanished in a burst of chakra, lightning, fire, and wind that tore through the clouds and blew them away. A light rain fell on the stadium. The sun was shining brightly, and an arch of rainbow could be seen over Kumo. The whole stadium was stunned by this casual display of control and power. The examiner then made a funny face at Momochi Wakashi, whose mouth was wide open. "Are you happy? The clouds won't come back for at least a few hours, which is long enough for the duels to be fought and won. Also, since you're from Mizu, you'll have an advantage because there's a lot of water in the air and on the ground. Wakashi just nodded in shock. The examiner smiled, happy with how much trouble he had made. Good. Now I expect a relative of Momochi Zabuza to put on a good show. He was one of the first shinobi I fought in battle and one of the few role models I had as a genin. He and his student taught me that being a shinobi requires making big sacrifices. He looked at the spinning display of the electronic match-up. It slowed down, then stopped, settling on 2 names. All right, folks. Shumaru of Suna takes on Rishinta Zachary in the first match. The hands of Kurenai were shaking. She could still feel the burn in her chakra that had been caused by a technique on such a large scale. She has always had a very good sense of chakra, and the years she spent learning genjutsu only made it better. She forced herself to stop being scared and looked at her friends. Sasuke. Kakashi? Did you see anything? Shaking his head, Sasuke turned off the Sharingan. It was a technique without hand seals, like Rasengan. His chakras seemed to be very focused on those tattoos on his arms. Shikaku guessed, it is probably a part of the jutsu. I've seen Anbu get a Fuin jutsu master to seal the skeleton of a favorite jutsu so they don't have to do the whole chain of hand seals and waste time, but I've never seen that method used for an ARS class ninjutsu. Sakura made a grumpy face and looked at Kakashi. You can store a jutsu using Fuin jutsu? That is one of the highest levels of Fuin jutsu, Sakura, but it is also a very dangerous and complicated field of study. Many shinobi have died trying to complete their seal mastery. I only know pieces I picked up from my Junin sensei. Jiraiya is probably Konoha's only living expert, but I doubt he would be willing to study and copy such techniques for us. Sasuke gave a sharp nod. He knew how dangerous Fuin jutsu could be because he had used it himself. Orochimaru had used the curse seal to twist and shape his mind. Shikamaru shook his head slowly. Naruto was always good at making up his own jutsus, even the really weird and perverted ones. That jutsu is probably only one of many more destructive ones he has. Jutsus he used in the field as aka Arashi. When everyone thought about how many people had died because of aka Arashi, a cold chill went down their spines. But who was the flower if Naruto was the storm? Tsunade was very proud of Naruto as he kept a firm grip on hot tempers and stepped in before more damage was done. He didn't favor one genin over the other, so he was a fair judge. At the end of each match, he gave a short review of the genin's strengths and weaknesses. Even those from villages outside the Iwakumo-Suna alliance were told what they needed to work on. Shumaru of Suna vs Rishinta Zaraki of Kumo, winner Shumaru. Momochi Wakashi of Mizu vs Odama Kiyoshi of Kumo, winner Kiyoshi. Then, at the next match, her heart stopped beating. Hayate Mitsuko of Konoha vs Nobuden Sakama of Iwa. The Iwa genin was better than the Konoha kunoichi because he had shown more skill and strength in the past. His Kekai Genkai made his skin thicker, so it was almost impossible for her to hurt him with an edged weapon, which was what she was best at. She looked at Dakuin to see if he could give her some comfort, and her heart sank. The Tsukikage had a frown and was slightly leaning forward. The Hokage wanted to know, what is it? Dakuin looked straight at the Godem. Sakama's entire clan was almost wiped out by a Konoha assassin who poisoned the water and food supply. More of them died on the front lines against the Yondaime because of the stupidity of my predecessor. It's been hard for him to adjust, and it doesn't help that his still-living relatives are shaping his ideas about revenge and Konoha. He is among the best of us. Rookie of the year he graduated. He didn't move on in the last 2 exams because he wanted to focus on his own training. He would play so that his teammates could have a chance to move on, but then he would give up. Tsunade looked at the pit and prayed that she wouldn't have to fight in surgery to save the life of a Konoha genin. Enough. Sakama tried to get out of the iron grip on his wrist, but he couldn't. He turned around and glared at the person who was stopping him from killing his target. The almond blue eyes were calm and almost knew what was going on, but the hold stayed strong. He hissed, Konoha destroyed my clan. And they ruined my childhood, the blonde agreed in a calm voice. They hurt me with words and weapons and beat me up. I was kicked out of the orphanage because I was always there to remind people. Even though Konoha has done terrible things to your village and maybe even to people you love, that doesn't mean you should lose control. You are not the first person to survive a terrible loss, and Kami knows you won't be the last. As long as there are humans, there will be wars, deaths, and survivors. His eyes were cold and filled with the subtle killing intent of an experienced ninja. Sakama couldn't help but look at and listen to this Junin, no, this Kage, who was the son of the man who almost killed all of Iwa's people. They are worthless hypocrites, but that doesn't mean you should be like them and kill everyone you fear and hate. You want to show them how bad they are in front of their faces. You want them to see how weak they really are. You want them to be afraid of shadows in the dark and live in fear. You want them to know that you had their lives in your hands, but it wasn't worth it when you're not getting paid to kill. Sakama calmed down slowly, and the way the words flowed and made sense almost made him fall asleep. Don't you dislike them? What did they do to you? What did you do? He wanted to know how this shinobi did it. The blonde smiled softly and let go. I cared about only a few people, those who cared about me. As a child, they gave me a reason to live. As I got older, I realized that I needed more things they couldn't give me and things other people wouldn't give me, so I left. Remember, every nin you kill also has a family, people who love him or her, a spouse, a parent, a child. When you kill them, you hurt other people the same way you hurt your own clan. Kill, but only when you have to. You are a shinobi, not a murderer. We only kill when we have to protect our village and family, not out of small, destructive emotions like vengeance or hatred that will eat you up. You are better than that. Sakama gave a slow nod and blinked back tears as the big hand put a loving grip on his shoulder. The big hand patted him on the back and said, Shosha Nobuden Sakama, get going. Your team and sensei are waiting for you. With a new outlook and a new idol, the Iwa Genin was pushed in the direction of his team and sensei. Hayate Mitsuko tensed up and waited for the last blow. Her ears were ringing, and she was sure that the Iwa Genin's blows had broken her forearms because she had blocked them, but nothing happened. The red spots were no longer visible through her eyelids. The sun couldn't shine. She slowly opened her eyes and looked around. A tall blonde kami was standing over her. The spiky mess of golden hair had a halo around it because of the light. As he reached out to her, his cream coat flapped around his braced legs. She slowly blinked. He was very handsome. The slanted blue eyes under straight eyebrows, the straight, narrow nose, and the interesting, faint white lines around his mouth were all very manly. He made her think of someone else. She asked in a whisper, Am I dead? He looked amused. Why do you ask? Because you look like the Yondaime Hokage, I must be in heaven. He blinked. I think you might have a concussion, Hayate-san. Let's get you to the hospital, he said as he carefully helped her up when she fell. When she fell off balance, she hurt her ankle. He made a TS King sound and carefully put one arm behind her shoulders and the other behind her knees to carry her in a bridal style, despite her protests. Hush, Hayate-san. Once the doctors say you're okay, you can walk on your own. Mitsuko made a face and argued. I still think I'm in heaven, because you look exactly like the Yondaime carving on the Hokage monument. He laughed in a deep, rich way. That's because he is a relative. Mitsuko blinked. What are you doing in Kumo if he is a relative? You should be in Konoha. Even though he kept walking, he didn't say anything. Why don't you ask your sensei that question, Hayate-san? If he can't answer, you can talk to your parents, any Junin, or even the clan heads and counselors in Konoha. Mitsuko made a face, but she nodded. A few seconds later, they were near where Shino-sensei was waiting at the edge of the dueling grounds. Mitsuko didn't say anything when her teacher took her away from the not Yondaime. After a hard training session, he would often carry her home. She heard the not Yondaime talking to Shino-sensei, but it was not clear. Naruto nodded at Shino. He didn't know what to tell Aburame. His clan was one of the few that backed his bid to become a Junin, even though they didn't have much power to make it happen. Shino. Shino answered with a nod. How is she, Naruto? She has a mild concussion and isn't sure where she is. She should be fine after a good night's sleep. Shino gave a slight frown before speaking. You left Konoha. Naruto's brow twitched in a funny way. If you were in my place, would you have stayed? Shino said, That's true. As soon as I was old enough, I would have sneaked into a merchant caravan to get out of Konoha. Naruto gave a snort. Oh, I tried that a lot, but the Anbu always found me. Both ninjas looked at Mitsuko, who was moving around in her sensei's arms and slowly blinking. Shino-sensei? Yes, Mitsuko. Why doesn't Yondaime-sama's family live in Konoha? Shino stiffened and looked at Naruto, who told him what was going on. I think she's a little crazy. She thought she was in heaven and I was the Yondaime. Mitsuko said, But you look so much like him, just like in the pictures. Naruto smiled in a wild, expectant way. I told her to ask you, her parents, and any shinobi, including the clan elders. With that little bombshell, he turned on one foot and walked away, his cream-colored coat flapping and the kanji for storm on his broad back almost on fire. What did he say, Shino? Shino looked at Kurenai by turning around. Sakura was already in front of him, doing a quick checkup on Mitsuko and healing her. Shino finally said, he didn't say anything. Just that Mitsuko probably has a concussion. He struggled for a moment. Mitsuko thought he was the Yondaime because he looked so much like the Yondaime. She wanted to know why he wasn't living in Konoha, and Naruto told her to ask me and everyone else in Konoha. The Junin looked at the genin, who was unconscious after Sakura had put him to sleep. She'll want to know, Kurenai said with a grim face. The more we don't tell her, the more she will want to know. If we lie, the Godem will find out, and she will blow up. Neji moved his head. No, there have been enough lies. In fact, there have been too many. It's time for the council and everyone else to admit their wrongdoings and pay for them. Shikamaru sighed. Let's put this on hold for now because there are still 2 more games to watch. Naruto smiled. He was so happy he was almost jumping up and down. The 3rd step had been finished. Kiyoshi was named the winner, but there wasn't much room for error. It could have gone to Sakama just as well. He had already made his suggestions about all the candidates and turned them in. All he had to do was make some small talk and go through the motions, and then he was free, at least until the end of the week, when he takes office. He had time to spare because he had given most of his old responsibilities to someone else, and Hiroshi insisted on taking care of the details for the ceremony. Naruto, people are waiting to meet you. Naruto stomped on Chibi Naruto, who was about to throw a fit, and then he went to Hiroshi like a good boy. He was going to have to do this a lot in the future, so it was best for him to get used to it now. Hiroshi was surrounded by the cages and daimyos who had come to see him. As Naruto moved around the circle, he carefully said hello and made polite small talk until he got to a group of 3 familiar faces. A smile that looked more like itself came out. Hello, Ba-chan, and he quickly moved away from Tsunade's punches. What did you call me? Tsunade couldn't help but feel relieved when she heard a familiar name. Naruto grinned. Ba-chan, because that's what you are, he teased, dodging her wild swings until she gave up and stopped, but Naruto kept a safe distance and turned his attention to the other 2. Shizune Ne-chan. A quick, short hug for the medic Nin who was just starting to blush. Ero-sensei. This is a more teasing way to say hello to Jiraiya. You'll never stop calling me that, are you? This was more of a statement from the Gamma Sanin, who was getting tired of it. Naruto thought about what was said and smiled happily. No, you'll always be Ero-sensei. Or Ero-senin, or... Just stop it, Gaki. Naruto replied, when you stop your research. Which will never happen, since you have no self-control, he said with a smile to all of the cages. If you don't know, Jiraiya is the author of a popular book series called Icha Icha. If any of you are fans of the series, ask him to sign your copies. The male cages and nobles all looked at the grumbling Sanin. Every single one of them secretly liked Icha Icha Paradise. Each of them made a private promise to get their books signed by the author before they left Kumo. Jiraiya didn't know whether to laugh or be scared of the brat. You know I was going to give you a copy of my new book before it came out. Naruto gave a shrug. If you don't, I'll buy it just like everyone else. Tsunade was in shock. Naruto. Naruto didn't move at all. Ba-chan, 95% of heterosexual men read Ero-senin's books, even if they don't admit it. When I was young, I often used Sandame Jiig's copies as hostages to get what I wanted. Everyone was shocked to learn that the professor, the Hokage who had been in power the longest, read smut and had been blackmailed by a child who probably threatened to destroy it. Tsunade let out a big sigh of frustration. Naruto was ruining Sarutobi-sensei's reputation by taking away his mystique. But, on the other hand, he was a dirty old pervert like most men. Then she felt something. When did you start reading books by Jiraiya, Naruto? Naruto puckered his lips as he tried to remember what happened. He was able to corrupt me on my second training trip. When things were slow, I would review and edit his work for him. I stopped doing this just before I left Konoha, because I was too busy after that. When they heard that, all of the men blinked. That explained why, about 10 to 12 years ago, there were a lot of new Icha Icha books over the course of 3 years. After that, there were longer gaps between new Icha Icha books. Tsunade was shocked. But I thought you hated perverts. Her old teammate had turned her beloved little brother into a bad person. Naruto gave a soft smile to the person who was the most like his grandmother. Ba-chan. All guys are perverts. I think it's in our genes to make sure the human race doesn't die out. I'm more honest about it, and I don't chase every single woman out there. I have one, and she's my wife. The books are a bit of spice for when we're alone. Tsunade's face lit up when he heard that. Jiraiya cracked a smile. I don't know why you read my books to get ideas when you're the one who has given me my ideas. Naruto looked angry. I swear, Ero-sensei, you don't know how lucky you are to still have your balls. If she found you after she caught you spying on us, he trailed off in a threatening way. Jiraiya cracked up. Tee-hee-hee. Forget Naruto. I'm a Sannin, which means I'm good at spying and getting away. Naruto replied with a deadpan face, and she is an S-class kunoichi on the trail of a self-proclaimed super pervert and porn writer who peeped on her during an intimate moment to get ideas for his next book. Except for one, all of the male shinobi shivered at the same time. But you kept her busy just fine, my deshi, Jiraiya said with a strange chuckle. Then he looked at Tsunade and shook his head. Ba-chan, just keep an eye on him. She might have gotten over it, but not if he keeps acting like this. Hiroshi gave his successor a strange look. Do you mean to tell me that Jiraiya actually used you in his books? Naruto shrugged in a smooth motion. Yeah, but I won't say which ones. Tsunade looked intrigued. Naruto, is it possible for me to meet your wife? She looked all around. She isn't here yet. She's probably running late. Tsunade asked, tell me a little about her. Naruto's face softened, and a warm glow spread through his body. She is mine, Ba-chan. She completes me in a way I've never felt before. With her by my side, I know I can do anything. She doesn't hit me or ignore me like Sakura. She doesn't care what other people think like most women in Konoha. She wouldn't blindly follow orders from someone higher up the command chain like Hinata. She is strong enough to make and follow her own path. She is strong in heart, mind, body, and soul. Hiroshi laughed softly and said, and you have. He got Tsunade's attention. His wife was also his old field partner. It started to make sense. Hinashin. Hiroshi murmured that he agreed. Aka Arashi and Hinashin. Hammer and scalpel. Power and elegance. The perfect team, both on and off the field. The Mizukage appeared to be interested. Is it possible to meet up with her? Naruto's head stood up. He smiled at Hiroshi and said, she'll be here in 15 minutes. She is moving in slowly and doing a circle. Several Konoha Junin stood still where they were hiding behind potted plants. The old saying that eavesdroppers never hear anything good about themselves was definitely true. Sakura quickly blinked her eyes to stop crying. She couldn't yell and say it was a lie because it was true. She hid and yelled at Naruto almost every day when they were genins together and even after they stopped being genins. Sasuke wanted to know if she was as strong as Naruto said she was, as guessed by the reports and analysts. So many things interested him. When they were genin, did Naruto hold back? Chunin? When Sasuke comes back to Konoha? How much power and skill did he really have for a village where he wasn't born to want him to be caged? Like most shinobi, Sasuke had heard of aka Arashi, but he had never seen the shinobi. Only what was left of the places where he fought. How did Naruto do it? What kind of jutsu did he use? Neji shook his head in sadness when he heard the hard truth about his cousin. His cousin liked Naruto and said she loved him, but in the end, she gave in to the demands of the clan she wanted to leave. And nothing was different. Things might have been different if she had followed her heart. In a good way. All people. But that chance was gone now, it was too late. Shikamaru wondered if Hinashin, Naruto's wife, was as annoying as Ino and Temari. All women were. But Naruto was the kind of person who liked chaos. Even when they were younger, he made a lot of it. Shino knew there would be more shocking news, because there always was when Naruto was involved. He wondered if Naruto's wife had any of his skills. Abarames and Inuzukas were able to give their compatible spouses from outside the clan a gift, which was some of their skills. Did Naruto have that much in common with the person he chose? Kurenai tried hard but couldn't come up with a good answer to the claim that Konohan women are weak-willed. Everyone gave in to what people thought. Naruto may have only had the Godem, who was her assistant, and Ichiraku's daughter, Ayame, by his side. Kakashi was sad and happy at the same time. The student he didn't pay attention to, who was the son of his sensei and Hokage, had earned the respect of a whole village and was now called Kage. He made a name for himself in the world of shinobi by coming up with his own unique techniques, which gave him the name aka Arashi. And Jiraiya had taken ideas from him and his wife. He decided to go back and read his old books to find out which ones the Sannin had used Naruto and his wife in. Inochi was curious about the kind of woman who would want to marry a Jinchuriki. In the heat of passion, what kind of woman would trust a Jinchuriki? Did she want his status and power, or did she really care about him? Living a lie and keeping up a false front around someone with the supernatural senses and skills of a Biju would not be easy. Shikaku thought about taking Naruto's wife as his own, but decided against it. If you were an assassin or tried to blackmail a kunoichi as famous as Hanashin, you would be killed. Naruto turned his attention to the screen of plants and spoke more loudly. Hokage-sama, I think I need to be clear about Kumo's future relationship with Konoha. It would help to have people who could each make independent reports to Konoha's council so that there are no misunderstandings. Please ask your ninja to come forward and listen to me. As he watched his old friends and fellow soldiers, the people he thought were his sensei, come out of the grass, his blue eyes were as cold as ice. He wouldn't let sympathy change what he said or make him less determined. You will go back to Konoha and give your reports. Kumo will never be an ally of Konoha. We will never sign a neutrality or trade treaty with Konoha. Our only contact will be when our shinobis are on opposite sides during a mission or during the Chunin exams. Tell your council that if Konoha attacks Kumo, we will fight back with full force. When it was just me, I accepted and put up with your scorn, hatred, and attacks. Now, though, I am no longer alone. I need to protect my family in a village full of shinobi and regular people. I won't put up with anyone who tries to hurt me or my family. I'll send 5 killers if you send one. If your Anbu kills 1 Kumo patrol, I'll tell my shinobi to kill 5 of your patrols. We won't let you try to spy on us or sneak in, and we won't give you back the bodies either. If you want to get other villages to fight against Kumo, feel free to do so. If you can. Blue eyes were coldly amused. Everyone knows about the Sandaime Hokage's tricks, and none of the fools in Konoha have the intelligence or subtlety to pull off a similar strategy of spreading false information on the large scale that would be needed. A few of the Junin, like Shikamaru, Neji, and Shino, who had accepted their part in the whole mess, didn't run away. Shikamaru waved his hand and said, "Don't worry about the council. The daimyo is already very mad at them. He has already cut a lot of funding, and Tsunade-sama has passed the debt on by cutting a lot of their pet projects and private campaigns." He smiled and said, "Nice job, Ne." "Thank you, Shikamaru," Naruto said with a smile that was a little bit warmer. "Ero Sennin made me take shogi lessons and play strategy games, which I didn't really like at first. I wanted to play some games with you, but I could never reach you." Shikamaru stopped. It had been a busy time in his life. He had just become a Junin and his usually laid-back father had put him on field duty. He hardly had time or energy to keep in touch with his friends. It had been too easy to put it off. Shikamaru was putting the pieces together. The usually calm strategist was staring at his father, who was cringing. Neji bowed his head and said, "I'm sorry about Hinata-sama." "Never apologize for someone else." Naruto shook his head. "They should do it. It's not something that should be given to someone else. Hinata chose what to do. She picked a clan. I still don't think it was the smartest thing for her to do." Shino sighed and nodded. For a while, it seemed like she had made peace with her father and passed the Junin exam, but it didn't matter. After you left, her sister was named the heiress. Since Tsunade-sama was too old, she wouldn't let the elders use the birdcage seal. She knows how to be a medic nin, but she never works outside of Konoha. Naruto laughed and said, "Figures." He shook his head and said, "Clans like that are control freaks. They'd rather beat their kids than change the way things are. If the Uchihas came from the Hyuga, it's not surprising that Itachi turned against them." "Itachi was crazy," Sasuke said with a stiff face. Naruto replied softly, "Itachi had a very good reason. You are just stirring up trouble, like you always do," Sakura yelled angrily. "What do you mean?" Everyone asked the new Raikage. Tsunade asked hesitantly, looking at Jiraiya, who pointedly looked away. A sinking feeling filled her stomach. Jiraiya knew about it, but he hadn't told her. Probably because Naruto told him not to. What other secrets, little bombshells, did Jiraiya keep quiet about? Before he answered, Naruto hesitated, and his eyes met Sasuke's. "I'm telling the truth. I can only tell you what other people have told me. Your clan elders they things were done to Itachi. Everyone stiffened. Uchiha Itachi was a genius. Was it because of an illegal experiment or something based on Orochimaru's ideas? Naruto chewed on his lower lip. I met Itachi a few years after I left Konoha, and we talked for a while. You can choose not to believe me, but as far as I'm concerned, your clan got what they deserved. The blue eyes were open. You can choose not to believe me, but as far as I'm concerned, your clan got what they deserved. It was a shame that Itachi chose to do that by killing everyone, even innocent people, and putting you through mental torture. I would have been happy to kill the elders and adult ninjas, blind all the adults, and seal the chakra vessels of every single Uchiha. In another world and another time, we would have been the best of friends, brothers. I hope you can find the peace you need. Can you tell us anything, Naruto? Tsunade asked with a frown. If you want proof, go look for it yourself, Naruto said with a snort. Both the Uchiha district and the Anbu archives should have records. What Itachi told me was a secret, and I won't break that trust by telling anyone else. You are not my cage, and I have nothing to give you. Tsunade stopped jerking away and nodded. What he said was true. Naruto closed his eyes for a moment and said, if you find out what I'm talking about, you're welcome to go see Kumo. We might or might not talk, depending on how I feel. He then turned to his old Junin sensei and said, Kakashi, I don't have anything to say to you. You're worse than trash to me, he snorted. Look below the surface, don't leave your friends behind. Too bad you never listened to your own advice. The copy nin took the insults in stride. He deserved them because he had betrayed his teacher, his own ideals, and his students. Naruto looked at Sakura and didn't care about the pink-haired Kunoichi at all. It was hard to believe that he used to love her so much. He tilted his head to one side as he watched the Kunoichi move around. Haruno Sakura, I don't know what I saw in you. I'd say you're a badass, but you don't even have the loyalty of a badass. Unless it has to do with your beloved, Sasuke-kun. He imitated a high-pitched falsetto, ignoring her flinch and fresh tears, as well as Kurenai's awkward attempt to comfort the younger woman. You know what? You should run for a seat on the Konoha Council because, like the rest of them, you are a parasitic leech. Do you know what you're going to tell your student? He asked Shino with a warmer smile. Shino let out a sigh. The truth will become clearer the more the council lies and tries to hide it. If things are going to change, it will have to start with the kids. Naruto laughed and said, oh yeah. Talk to the crew of the Konohamaru. He is young and has a temper, but the last time he talked to me, it seemed like he was learning to think strategically like his uncle and grandfather. He smiled and said, I sometimes write to him through Gamakichi. Jiraiya blinked and laughed. I wondered why the brat begged to sign the frog contract when he already had Sarutobi Sensei's ape contract. When Gamabunta and Enma first agreed, I was surprised. Rarely do people have two summons. I talked to Gamabunta, Naruto said with a smooth shrug. Konohamaru promised that he would never call up a frog stronger than Gamakichi. Unlike most contracts, this one only lasts for 20 years. It will either be renewed or end at the end. To-san. A child's high-pitched squeal cut through the hum of conversation. Naruto turned away with a big smile on his face, took 2 quick steps, and squatted down with his arms wide open. A small, dark blue-clad person with black hair pushed through the crowd and headed straight for the Rokudame Reikage. Naruto laughed as he easily adjusted to the impact. He got up from his crouch and put one arm between the boy's legs as he lifted him up so their faces were even. Got you, Ryuchi. Sasuke, Kurenai, and Shino all stopped when they saw the face of a little boy they knew. Sasuke's mind went blank. The boy was a Uchiha and could use the Sharingan. His father was Naruto, who Kakashi called the most unpredictable ninja of all time. Naruto had gotten ahead of him in reviving his clan. But Ryuchi's clan was not Uchiha. It was Namikaze, the clan of his father, the Rokudame Reikage, and his grandfather, the Yondaime Hokage. Kurenai could have cried when she realized what was going on, but she didn't. She was a kunoichi and had been trained to hide her emotions, so she didn't make a sound as her mind took another blow. What have I told you about running at events? Naruto scolded the boy, though his heart clearly wasn't in it. Don't run because shinobis have fast reflexes. The boy dutifully recited in a sing-song fashion before brightening. But if they have good reflexes they can get out of the way. Naruto chuckled. Like you did a few weeks ago. You put too much stock in being able to guess what people will do. I will seal your dojutsu if you don't stop. Naruto, he said with a frown. Stop making him feel scared. That's a job for his parents. The pair blinked mildly at the Hokage before the older one coughed discreetly. Oba-chan, you know how I said you really are an Oba-chan? Yes. Tsunade was getting confused. What was the brat getting at? Naruto patted the boy's back. This is one reason why you are an Oba-chan. This is my son, Namikaze Ryuchi. Pieces began to shift in Tsunade's mind. Ryuchi was not a very common name. The description fit. Sealing your dojutsu. Ryuchi peeked at the Hokage feeling a bit shy. To-san. Why do you call her Oba-chan? Because she is really old. She was on the same genin team as Jiraiya Jii-san. Ryuchi blinked. Red bled into black irises and tomos swirled in each eye. Sakura hissed. Sharingan. The boy blinked again, deactivating the dojutsu. To-san is right. You really are an Oba-chan. Tsunade was torn between laughter and fits. Laughter won out. Figured the Gaki's son would be just as smart-mouthed as him. Then something else clicked. Your wife is here, said a voice with a deep, throaty tone. Naruto smiled as he turned away from the group and let his son slide down his front to the floor. The Kages and Junins watched as a thin, heavily pregnant woman in a thick peacock blue silk maternity kimono made her way through the crowd. On the skirt, the thick material was printed with a delicate design of twigs in black silhouette. The obi was made of black silk with silver crescents and swirls stitched on it. It was held together with a purple silk cord. Experienced ninja could easily tell what weapons she was carrying. The tanto inside the obi, the tesson she carried like a normal fan in one sleeve, the steel senbon that held her black silky hair in a beautiful knot, and even the ironwood chopsticks with white silk tassels. The soft leather slippers tied with ribbons instead of the usual getup were the odd thing about the traditional picture. Her face was distinctly Uchiha with its triangular shape, thin eyebrows that flew away, black almond-shaped eyes, fine, delicate bones, and small, firm mouth that twitched in a very faint smile. She had a mask-like look of mild disdain on her face. Before their eyes, the mask softened, the icy sheen melted, and the eyes, which had been hard and stone-like, became a little bit wet with emotion. Inada was a word that brought up a lot of feelings, hidden promises, and whispered secrets. Barakoi. She moved until she was right in front of him, but she didn't try to touch him, until he started to move. Before he bent down to touch her lips with his, a big, tanned hand cupped her smooth cheek and pointed chin. The almost pure touch quickly turned hot in front of the onlookers. In a move they had done many times before, the couple moved so that Naruto was at her side, with one cupped hand on her face and the other free right arm wrapped around her back and resting on her swollen waist. Her left arm was around his neck, and her thin fingers were tangled in the blonde hair at the back of his head. Every so often, she would slide her nails down his scalp and back up again. She had a tight grip on his hand, which was resting on her waist. With her right hand, she moved his hand over her stomach. Tsunade gawped. The couple had been kissing for 30 seconds, a minute, and 2 minutes. How long could they go without stopping to take a breath? 15 minutes is the longest I've seen, Jiraiya said as he took notes in his always with him notebook. Naruto definitely has the magic touch. He can make all his lovers come to him with a simple caress by stimulating their chakra and nervous systems. A mix of genjutsu and ninjutsu that would be called ijutsu, perfect for seduction and infiltration. He can make any female and even a few males spill their guts after just a few touches. After a blink, Tsunade saw something else. His hand is purple and glowing. Hiroshi nodded sagely. He's giving her his chakra. Habara needs regular infusions of his biju-laced chakra while she's pregnant, he told them, seeing that they were confused. A Jinchuriki's child requires more energy from the mother. She almost lost Ryuchi before the doctors figured out what was needed. After she gave birth, the chakra stayed in her body, giving her more energy and endurance than most kunoichis. Not that she wasn't dangerous before. Tsunade stilled. You mean Naruto can make anyone stronger if he wants? Hiroshi gave a snort. He grimaced. Of course not. There has to be a strong emotional and physical tie, and the person receiving it has to be strong to begin with. Otherwise, they would burn out from too much. The council made us try it on a few volunteers. They lived, but they can't shape chakra anymore, he said with a smirk. Of course, it's hard to say if Ryuchi and his future children will be able to do the procedure because they have less of the same powerful chakra. He then turned to the couple. Ah, it looks like they're done. The couple broke up as if on cue. Both of them were red, breathing hard, had big eyes, swollen mouths, and lots of saliva. Habara shivered as Naruto hummed, making a low, throaty sound that gave her goosebumps and made her heart beat faster. He moved his mouth to one cheek and swirled his tongue in her outer earlobe before giving her a series of tiny kisses and tasting the skin along her jawline all the way down to her collarbone. She couldn't help but let her head fall to one side so that her husband could reach her throat more easily. She had a vague idea who was there, but she didn't care. Kumo knew that they sometimes did things that were too public. She didn't care if the dignitaries got blue balls or hot flashes because most of them were men and would probably enjoy the free show. Well, Konoha didn't have much say in what she did. In fact, she couldn't wait to show him how wrong he was. She heard her husband's soft laugh and felt his chakra move under her skin and into her core, which was both soothing and exciting. She protested with a soft sound, and she was vaguely aware that it made her look weak and cute, but she didn't care. People who were important knew that this kunoichi had claws. She moved slowly until she was curled up against him, almost stuck to him from shoulder to thigh. He kept her close by putting his arm across her back. She took a deep breath and smelled his familiar, musky scent as she made up her mind. Naruto was very careful not to look at the people who used to be his friends. Instead, he looked at the dignitaries. "Sorry about that," Naruto said, but those who knew him well knew he wasn't sorry at all. "With the Chunin exams and the new jobs, we haven't had much time together," he said. Then he smiled more naturally at all the cages and daimyos. He smiled and said, "This is my wife, Namikaze Habara. Your intelligence reports may have her listed under a different name, Hanashin, but we've both given up our Bolt identities." He introduced each person in the group by memory and by doing it over and over again. He then watched with quiet pride as Habara charmed the older men and won the respect of the women with her soft-spoken insights into relationships and child psychology. Then they got to the person he thought of as his grandmother. Habara didn't loosen up or let down her guard. Instead, she greeted the Hokage from afar. Naruto felt bad when he saw Ba-chan's face hurt, but it was for the best. He was surprised when Habara was the one to explain and break the tension. "I'm sorry, Godem-sama, but it's for the best. You're a skilled doctor, and your council will want to know why you didn't do anything to stop me," she said in a calm voice. "I won't let any Konohan take care of me or my kids, even if they take care of my husband. My husband can take care of himself." Tsunade nodded slowly. As a doctor, she was more than able to cause medical problems. She could have easily started labor, spread infections, made blood clots, or caused subdermal hematomas. The list went on and on. The Hokage watched the kunoichi look over the rest of the Konoha group and quickly dismiss them. Some of them were fine with the once-over and dismissal, but others got angry when she seemed to imply that she didn't think they were a threat. Tsunade was surprised to learn that the kunoichi was stoking the flames on purpose, pushing them to their limits, so they would blow up. She was happy that none of her ninja broke the rules. Tsunade pushed for information while silently cursing Jiraiya because she wanted to know more. The idiot hadn't said a word about Naruto's wife. "Habara-san, what will you tell me about yourself?" The kunoichi gave a friendly smile. "My father was a Uchiha, as you figured out," he said. "My mother was weak-willed and easy for him to control. She didn't do anything to protect me from him or other people when I was younger." This made the Konohans stand up straight. Her unidentified Uchiha father knew she existed, but he left his child outside of Konoha. That could only mean that he was married and couldn't risk showing signs of an unapproved relationship. Habara ignored their tension and went on. "I was determined to be strong and protect myself. When Itachi killed the Uchiha clan, I was glad to no longer have to worry about my safety. I spent a few years traveling alone or with a partner and hunting before I met Naruto. Oinen, that's high class to have done the job for several years. How did Intel miss her? We just clicked. After being with Sasuke for a while, Naruto decided to join the Kumo shinobi. While I was pregnant, most of what we did was diplomatic and courier work. Soon after Ryuchi was born, the Raikage decided that Bolt needed war shinobi and combat specialists, so we joined. We have a few friends who also have kids, so we took turns taking care of the kids so that the kids would always be around an adult they knew. When Ryuchi got older, I decided to cut back on the number of missions I went on so that I could teach him how to use the Sharingan." Everyone blinked. Teach a child how to use the Sharingan? But why would a child need to be taught? The Sharingan only showed up in older children who had enough chakra to activate it. Uchiha Itachi was the youngest Sharingan master because he activated his Sharingan when he was 7 and mastered it when he was 8. Hiroshi gave them a friendly smile, as if he could read their minds. Ryuchi had so much chakra that the Sharingan was already working when he was born. Naruto had to seal the Sharingan until Ryuchi was old enough to understand how to control chakra and use it on purpose. Ryuchi's seal was broken when he turned 4. He was having a lot of fun rubbing it in Konoha's face, watching their faces as they realized what they had done, what they had disregarded, and what they had lost. For a while, I was curious to know if Naruto could boost other Kekai Genkais and Dojutsus, but he is married and won't have kids with anyone else but Habara. Naruto laughed and said, "You're right, GJII. If you want to do some kind of experiment, don't try to set up my kids with each other." Habara lightly hit her husband on the bicep and glared at the old rakage, saying, "Hiroshi-sama, don't you dare set up any marriages for my son, he is not even a genin." "Only because you won't let him take the academy exam," Hiroshi winced. Habara glared at him and said, "Right. I don't want him to be a genin. Not before he's at least 8 years old. Until then, he can study at home." She glanced at Jiraiya. The old pervert is kind of a good teacher, since he taught both Naruto and his father. His bad choice of other things to do is what worries me. Jiraiya grimaced and grabbed the cloth over his heart. "Oh, you wound me, Habara-sama." Habara snorted, which was a rude sound coming from a kunoichi who seemed very refined. "I don't see any wounds, but I'd be happy to give you a few, Jiraiya." She briefly touched her hair and flicked her wrist. The Sannin yelped and turned into a strange shape to avoid being hit by several senbons. "Okay. Good enough. I'll do my homework away from the compound." Tsunade couldn't help but smile when she saw how the younger woman had treated her old teammate. It was sad, but if she had been brought in, Itachi would have killed her like he had done with every other Uchiha. Naruto smiled, happy to see that his most important people respected and liked each other. He didn't think Habara would ever trust Shizune or Tsunade, though. It had taken her months to get to this point of comfort and trust with Jiraiya, and it was only because the Gamma Sannin had made it clear through his actions and words that he valued his students more than his old village, which didn't value their sacrifices and accomplishments. "Tell the Konoha's council what you have seen and heard. I don't care what conclusions they come to. As far as I'm concerned, they're all blind fools and cowards." He looked at Nara Shikaku and Yamanaka Inochi and said, "I don't understand how you two of all people just stood there and did nothing. Yamanaka-san, based on your clan jutsus, you should know a lot about psychology. What were you thinking when you chose not to help? And Nara-san, what's the point of treating one of your own shinobi so badly that he has every reason to be angry and bitter? You're just making Orochimaru less powerful and giving him more reasons to hate you." Naruto shook his head. "What you do in the future is up to you. I don't care about Konoha," he told the dignitaries in cages as he left. "It's been a hard month, and I want to spend some time with my family." The Konoha envoy watched the 3 people make their way through the crowd and toward the exit. They were sometimes stopped by Kumo Nin and regular people, but the couple always said hello and answered questions before moving on. Namikaze Minato was like that. He would listen to even the smallest voice because he thought everyone was important. He was always willing to forgive. Naruto was a lot like that. Shikamaru broke the older Junin's dreams when he said, "He will never come back. Not when he has respect and friends, a whole village that loves him, and the title of Kage." In Konoha, there are nothing but bad memories and anger. For both of them. Sakura cried quietly. For once, the inner Sakura didn't have anything good to say, like loud words of encouragement or plans for what to do. Sasuke was quiet. Was Naruto right? Had the clan elders experimented on Itachi, like Orochimaru did with him and other Oto Nin? He made a silent promise to find those records Naruto talked about. He was sure the Godem would give him access to the Anbu archives as well. Tsunade sighed as she worked hard on her paperwork. Since they got back to Konoha, things had been dangerously quiet. The council had listened to every shinobi's point of view and all the facts, but they hadn't said anything. Tsunade had Sasuke, Shikamaru, and Neji look through the Uchiha district and Anbu archives for the proof Naruto had mentioned. So far, they haven't found absolute proof, but there were references to Itachi throughout his career as a shinobi and records kept by medic nins who were known to take orders from Danzo. These records could not have been kept without the help of more than one person. Tsunade-sama. The Godem looked up from her paperwork to look at Iruka. He had taken Naruto's absence very badly and blamed himself for not noticing how much the teen was hurting. As a result, he cut himself off from the academy, where there were too many painful memories. What is it, Iruka? There was an addition to the council meeting agenda, Iruka said with a scowl. Hobako Setsuna wants to think about whether or not he should attack Kumo. Ignore the little pissant, said Tsunade with a snort. The daimyo himself said that Konoha couldn't go to war with Kumo. He said, if you're stupid enough to go up against Namikaze Naruto, I'll stand back and watch him kill you, and I won't send a single Ryu for the rebuilding, even if 80% of Konoha dies of hunger and exposure, and I agree with him. In fact, as far as she was concerned, the first people who wouldn't get food would be the families of the idiots who started the trouble. She grinned with savage satisfaction. They tortured a boy for what his father did to save them, so I feel completely justified in starving their own flesh and blood for their own stupidity. Iruka opened his mouth to protest, but then he shut it. He had seen and heard too much in Konoha, and his idealism had broken. He could easily see why Tsunade had left, why Jiraiya had left and wouldn't come back despite the council's threats, and why Tsunade had been so reluctant to become Hokage. Tsunade-sama. Both ninja looked up at Raida, the Godem liaison with Anbu intelligence operations. Ibiki has noticed something, he said. What? Raida bit his lip and decided it was best to just say it out loud. A few Konoha shinobi have asked for a break. It makes sense, since the number of missions has gone down and there are problems with Kumo. Ibiki has found proof that the shinobi have set up an illegal plan to attack Kumo. Ibiki doesn't know what the exact goal is. Godem clenched his fingers and the heavy, dense wood broke apart. I want an investigation and any theory. Get Uchiha Sasuke, Nara Shikamaru, and Hyuga Neji on this immediately. I give them permission to break every law as long as they get things done. If I have to, I'll call for martial law. The two Chunins looked at the Godem and nodded before running off to get the Junins in question out of range before she really blew. Tsunade stared at the group of young nins before her. It had expanded from just 3 to a sizable task force. Uchiha Sasuke, Nara Shikamaru, Hyuga Neji, Hibasha Tenten, Yamanaka Ino, Akamichi Choji, Sarutobi Konohamaru, Miyugi Udon, Kamachi Moegi, Morino Ibiki, Hitaki Kakashi, Haruno Sakura, Hyuga Hinata. The last 3 had insisted on joining when they caught wind of what was going down and surprisingly had shown positive initiative. She gave the order, give me your report. Details can wait, but I need to know if Kumo plans to attack Konoha. Shikamaru laughed. The attack will happen in 48 to 7 days, Tsunade-sama. It took Kumo that long to kill off Ne. This time, they'll be fighting all of Konoha, which gives them even more reason to be angry. Neji's eyes were like frozen orbs. The mission of the task force had 2 parts. Namikaze Hibara just had twins 2 weeks ago, a boy and a girl. 3 days after that, rogue Konoha Anbu and Junins attacked her. Who are not working. There is no doubt that they were there to kill her and take the babies. Hibara-san was weak, but she fought off her attackers long enough for help to get to her. A Konoha nin almost killed one of the babies because he thought it would be better to get rid of the Sharingan than to let Kumo keep it. Another group tried to take Namikaze Ryuchi out of the library at the academy. Before the instructors stopped the kidnappers, the boy used a Raiden Jutsu to kill one and disable another. Not a single of the rogue Konoha nins escaped to reach Kumo's walls. Kumo's elites including Bolt and the Rokudame Raikage slaughtered all the attackers before conducting a house-to-house search to locate and take out every single Konoha infiltrator, leaving a few alive for interrogation. According to reports, he was in a 6-tailed state, in complete control and absolutely furious. I believe we felt the effects of his displeasure just a few days ago. Everyone stopped moving and thought back to the violent wave of evil chakra that came from Kumo and swept across the elemental countries. The next few days were full of damaging gale force thunderstorms that uprooted several old trees and caused homes and businesses tens of thousands of yen worth of damage. Many of the farmers were still out checking on their crops to see how bad the damage was. Konoha is completely screwed. Ino guessed what everyone thought about the situation. Naruto will never, ever forgive Konoha ninjas for trying to kill his family. He will want blood. This is exactly what both Raikages and the Kazekage told us would happen. Control the council or face the consequences. I guess we're facing the consequences. The Godem wanted to know who gave the order. Someone high up must have pulled strings for something this big. Shikamaru looked at all of his notes. We are still getting names, but so far more than half of the council is on the hook because they didn't tell what they knew. Tsunade nodded slowly. Treason, she said, picking up a pencil and a piece of paper. What they did brought danger to Konoha's doorsteps. Give me the names. Every single one of them will be arrested. Their personal wealth will be used to rebuild Konoha. If they have family or dependents, they can find jobs or do what peasants do when the main income earner dies. Become prostitutes or laborers. None of them will be Konoha's shinobi unless they can prove their innocence in this mess. After 3 days, the Godem and a few other Konoha shinobi were waiting on the walls. Scouts sent ahead by the Hyuga said that a group of about 300 Suna, Iwa, and Kumo shinobi were just inside the border. They included the new Raikage and his wife. Slowly but steadily, they moved toward Konoha. Everyone who tried to stop them failed miserably. In an hour, they would be at the wall. Tsunade wanted to do 2 different things. One person said to just stand back and watch as Naruto destroyed Konoha, the place that was causing so much pain. The other person insisted that she was the Hokage, no matter how much she hated it, and that she had to protect her village because it was in her family's blood. The first person to see the war party was Neji. He was proud of how steady his voice was when he said, "They are here." Neji was aware that he was one of the best ninja in Konoha. He also knew that he was no match for Namikaze Naruto or anyone else. This was the genin who beat him, even though he wasn't very good at his job. Shikamaru said out loud, "We cannot attack. There may be less than 200 Kumo nin out there, but we don't know much about their skills or strategies. All we know is that they are usually very destructive, and what's worse is that they probably share techniques with their allies, the Iwa and Suna." Iruka said in a low voice, "And Naruto will not let this go. He didn't have the skills to fight against one of the new Kumo elites in the upcoming battle. He has always fought best to protect those he cares about. Right now, Konoha is a threat to those he loves. That's why I'm going to turn over every single one of those traitorous scumbags who have been staying at Ibiki's," Tsunade said with a grim face. Those who were torn gave a few grim smiles of support and winced. They didn't notice when a young Chunin climbed up the wall to join the Junins. Moegi said softly, "Tsunade-sama, I just found something else in the private records of one of the council members that Ibiki has in custody. She was one of many trusted Chunins and Kunoichis who were given the job of going through the mountains of scrolls and files that had been taken." She looked over Sasuke's shoulder while he was using his Sharingan to follow the Kumo group. "It has something to do with Uchiha Itachi." Sasuke stood up straight and looked at the young Chunin. "What?" Moegi made her back get stiff. "It's really about me." Sasuke briefly shut his eyes. When he was younger, he would have asked about everything. He was more cautious when he was older and wiser. Does it change anything about the way things are now? Moegi nodded. "Hi. You might need some emotional support. It's ugly." Sasuke glanced at Shikamaru. The Nara was a friend now. He was more open to new ideas and didn't make snap decisions. You could also count on him to keep his mouth shut. "I want Shikamaru to know." Godem, Shikamaru, Sasuke, and Moegi ran to one of the guard station barracks, where Sasuke used a sound-blocking barrier jutsu he had learned in Otokagore to set up a privacy barrier. Moegi waited until all 4 of them were sitting around the small card table before taking some scrolls out of her bag. She took a deep breath before looking Sasuke in the eye. "These are copies of summaries of what I found. The originals are still being kept safe. I'll tell you what I found. Uchiha Itachi has never existed." Sasuke looked angry. "What the hell do you mean, Moegi?" Moegi looked at the Godem to see if he had the courage to talk before he did. Uchiha Mikoto and Uchiha Fugate were expecting a child about 32 years ago. Instead of the Uchiha heir they were expecting, she gave birth to a daughter. Sasuke froze. Then, where did Itachi come from, and where did my sister go? He felt sick as he realized what was going on. "She is Habara, isn't she?" Was not a question, but a statement. Moegi nodded. "Yes, Namikaze Habara is your older sister and the first child your parents had." Sasuke looked angry. "Okay, so my father didn't like having a daughter, so he got rid of her. Then where did Itachi come from? Was he from one of the cadet branches?" Moegi put out his hand to touch Sasuke's. He wasn't the kind of person who liked to be touched, but he needed someone to comfort him right now. Sharingan lit up when he said, "Sasuke, Habara was Itachi." The face of Uchiha stopped moving. "I don't know all the details of the process, but your father gave Nei permission to turn her into the perfect shinobi because she was a girl and not the wanted male heir. Since most girls don't like to kill, they used a combination of Fuinjutsu, hormone treatments, and Genjutsu to make her forget she was a girl. She became Itachi. When it became clear that Itachi was making quick progress, the asshole thought that having a Uchiha prodigy would be good for the clan's reputation, so he put Itachi in the academy, where things pretty much went as we know them. But when the Sharingan showed up, the mental conditioning started to fall apart. They tried different drugs to keep control of their perfect weapon, but in the end, it didn't work. Itachi lost his temper and killed everyone in the clan. At that moment, Tsunade's face looked like storm clouds. Bastards. I want to know the names of everyone who did this horrible thing, she said with a sneer. They will pay. I'll give Habara either their heads or their broken bodies. Shikamaru took a deep breath and asked questions that no one else had thought of. Did Itachi join Akatsuki knowing that he was really a woman? Moegi shook her head and said, I don't know. The Sharingan and Byakugan have never been able to figure out how the change was forced. Itachi may have broken free of the Genjutsu and mental conditioning, but I don't think he knew he was born a girl. No one would, and Tsunade thought grimly, not unless they saw Itachi shape chakra over the seals without any clothes on. Akatsuki might have had Fuinjutsu experts, but Itachi would never have let himself be completely vulnerable around them. Sasuke didn't realize that tears were falling down his face. His beloved Aniki was a lie made up by his own clan. Then he realized that Ryuchi was his nephew and that Konoha had tried to kill his niece and nephews. Naruto is a master of seals, says Jiraiya. Shikamaru said, one of them might have hurt Itachi's clothes enough in battle for him to realize something was wrong, or Itachi might have learned enough about seals to get an unknown seals master to break the mask. It doesn't matter who broke the Fuinjutsu, Tsunade said as she tapped her hand on the table. At some point, probably after the Akatsuki were all killed, Uchiha Itachi disappeared and was thought to be dead. Then Habara came into view. Sasuke looked up and murmured, she said she felt safe. In Kumo, she said she was glad Itachi killed the clan because it made her feel safe, he added. Tsunade softened. She might have made herself into two different people to deal with the madness and stress of the situation and to hide the truth, her shame, and her anger. Shikamaru softly hummed, she went hunting. I thought she was a Kumo Oinen, but these facts show that she probably worked on her own. She most likely hooked up with Naruto at this point. Do you think he knew? Sasuke asked. Itachi was really Habara? Shikamaru just shrugged and said, only Naruto knows the answer to that. He shook his head. Naruto was always good at taking things as they came. He probably didn't give her story a second thought when he heard it. Tsunade laughed and said, you're right. Naruto wouldn't care about her past as long as she didn't try to kill him. Hell. Jiraiya told me that during his training trips, he tried to make friends with a few Nukenins. Many of them gave in to his constant nagging and taught him a few jutsus. That's how Oyabun is, Moegi said with a teary smile. Even if you were mean to him in the past, he is always willing to forgive you and move on. Then she scowled. But he shouldn't. This time, no. They were trying to kill his kids. Tsunade nodded. And he won't. Naruto is willing to take a blow that could kill him, but he will never put those he cares about in danger. And he knows that the only way to get rid of this threat is to kill everyone who is behind it. Moegi huffed, then give the fools to him. For all they've done, they're going to be killed anyway. Shikamaru tapped the table with a short fingernail to get their attention and then changed the subject. Once they decided to be together, they probably decided to join a village. It is hard to raise a family by mercenary work or bounty hunting. Tsunade laughed and said, Hiroshi must burn incense every day to be so lucky. He gets 2 S-class ninja, a seal master, a Jinchuriki, and a Dojutsu Kekai Genkai all at once. In Kumo, one retired Raikage sneezed. Naruto probably used his connections to get contracts and trade going again. Shikamaru guessed that Habara worked on making their shinobi better. Once they had the trust of the Yondaime Raikage, they moved to Bolt, posed as a Ka Arashi and Hanashi, and started messing with Konoha, he said. Can't say I blame them, Tsunade said with a sad smile. After all this crap, no way. She looked at Shikamaru and said, I only care about making it through this storm. Ideas? Hunker down and don't move a muscle, Moegi said. Shikamaru has the right idea. Let Naruto and Habara have all the jerks. What do you think, Sasuke? He looked at Sasuke, who had been very quiet. Moegi is right, the Uchiha said with a smile that was really more of a grimace. Give Naruto all the ones we have found so far. I'll have fun trying to catch the last few rats. As soon as the four of them stood up, Sasuke took down the barrier, and Moegi ran off to keep looking through the records. It would be suicidal for any Chunin to go up against the elites Kumo would send. Tsunade walked up to the wall, where there were several Doden barriers at strategic places and near each gate. Report. Kakashi looked at the Hokage and said, "The people who are attacking have a few Iwa Nin with them. They are making these barriers with a combination of high-level Doden jutsus. The shinobi might be able to get over them, but the civilians will be stuck. Even the side gates that aren't really there have been covered. Even those used by Anbu." Tsunade's face was gloomy. Jiraiya probably told them everything. As Konoha's unofficial spy master, the Gamma Sanin knew a lot about Konoha's secrets and how things were done. Have they asked for anything? Tsunade was interested. Not yet. They have been moving apart in groups of 10, making a long line where people can barely see each other. I don't know what their plan is. A few hundred yards away from the walls, Naruto watched as his shinobis spread out in the pattern he had planned. He felt a cold, savage sense of satisfaction, and he was sure that most of it had nothing to do with the Kyuubi. In the years since he left Konoha, Naruto had come to accept the Kyuubi no Yoko as a part of him, for better or worse. To his surprise, the Biju had calmed down a bit once Naruto had cut all ties with Konoha, but the Yoko was still grumpy and rude about hairless pink simians. Naruto had a sneaking suspicion that someone in Konoha had done something to make the Biju. He looked down at his wife, his mate, his love. Even though she had just given birth 3 weeks ago, she insisted on joining the Kumo war party. A full team of doctors did what they could to heal her, and Kyuubi's chakra did the rest. "Why are you here, Bara Koi? You should be with the kids in Kumo." Habara looked up at her husband with calm, cool eyes and said, "It's likely that you'll lose control. Even the Kyuubi couldn't stop you from yelling at some stupid Konohan for being so rude. I have to make sure you come back by being here. Your village needs you. And so do I and our children," Naruto said, relaxing as she stroked him. "Besides, I want this to be over with as soon as possible." Her eyes were like jagged pieces of obsidian. Naruto nodded, used the jutsu to make the sound louder, and then started to talk. "Konoha. My wife and kids have been hurt by your shinobi. Just like you tried to kill me, they tried to kill them. When you hurt me, I let it go. I will never forgive you for hurting my family in this way." Tsunade closed her eyes, prayed, and hoped this would work. "Raikage-sama, I and the council did not officially approve of this action," she said. "But it was your shinobi who did it. If you can't keep your shinobi and people in line, I'll do it for you," Naruto replied. "Wait. I know who is to blame for this crime, and many more. You're welcome to them." Naruto tilted his head and looked down at his wife, who whispered, "Send them out." Before giving the orders, Tsunade glared at the Junin who was protesting. In just 15 minutes, several clan heads, clan elders, counselors, and shinobi department leaders, including Hyuga Hiyashi, were put outside the walls of Konoha, bound hand and foot with chakra-sealing manacles, and the gates were shut behind them. Namikaze Habara used a ninjutsu that only Uchiha Itachi had ever used in living memory, and Hyuga Hinata watched with eyes as cold as ice. Amaterasu. Her husband's futon jutsu made the black fires worse. Within seconds, the screams stopped, and all that was left on the glassy ground was burned flesh and bones. The intense heat had melted and fused the dirt. Sasuke didn't flinch as he watched the execution. They had done terrible things to Naruto, and it was likely that they had done the same to Ida no Habara. Uchiha Itachi was dead, and only Namikaze Habara was still alive. Shikamaru watched with worry, wondering if Naruto's thirst for blood was satisfied and if he would leave now that the guilty were dead. "As much as I appreciate the gesture, I think it's too late at this point in the game," Naruto said in a cold voice. "Since Konoha has so much money in shinobi, and they spend it all trying to kill me, Kumo thinks steps should be taken to fix that." He looked at the teams closest to him and said, "Now." Then the earth began to shake, and the air started to burn.
So this was it for today. I will continue the story in next part. Till then, we weeb offline.